And so here we are, West Coast to play Collingwood in the 2018 AFL Grand Final. Kane, it was a disaster. I know it's a cliche, but it was terrible.
Absolutely, yeah. It looked like a deer in headlights, didn't it? Right from the start. It is the big story today. When you go over there with the weight of expectation, the Melbourne supporters, the fairy tale's still alive, and you serve this up in the first quarter and in the first half. Game over at quarter time, goalless for the first half. They were the highest scoring team in 2018 Melbourne, so for the Eagles to keep them goalless in the first half is amazing. No one would have predicted this, and it was this handball errors. I mean, that is a handball under no pressure, missing by 5 metres, and that happened time and time again. They turned the footy over. The Eagles' first 3 goals came from Melbourne turnovers, and game over, unfortunately, for Simon Goodwin and his Demons.
So a 66-point win for the West Coast Eagles to make their way into the grand final, and you can imagine there'll be a lot of fans travelling over for the match. Let's zero in on where it all went wrong for the Demons today. 7 players didn't even have any tackles.
Smashing the tackles all over the park, really. I mean, Melbourne have been the best contested side in the competition, the best midfield by far this year, and they're beating out their own game. And I was really disappointed with an experienced Melbourne player today in Jordan Lewis. Melbourne got him across for these moments. Now this, if you look at the clock, this is inside the first 2 minutes of the game. Melbourne have possession of the ball. That's an undisciplined free kick that we come to expect from Lewis. That's a shot on goal from the Eagles. This, straight after, handball, no pressure, straight to Josh Kennedy to get him involved in the game. And it was just, for a player who has played 26 finals, the most experienced performer on the ground, it was a disaster. It's the worst game of footy I've seen Jordan Lewis play, and this was the catalyst for the bad start from Melbourne, and he'd be really disappointing and probably thinking, you know, should I go on next year with his performances, not just today, but across the board this year? What will he add on field to Melbourne next year? Do
you think that's a legitimate question that will be asked inside the Demons as they conduct their post-mortem?
I think it needs to be asked. I think Simon Goodwin needs to, in the cold, hard light of day, when the dust settles, put up his best 22 players and what that looks like for round 1 next year, and really ask himself, is Jordan Lewis in it? And if he is, well, he goes on. If he's not, is he prepared to play VFL footy for maybe half the year? And for a champion player who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, he's a 4-time premiership player, has had an amazing career, does he want to finish his career like Bernie Vince did in the VFL? And they're the questions that will need to be put to him.
All right, we saw that opening goal from Josh Kennedy, and it really got the crowd involved, didn't it? He is your Saturday star.
Yeah, and this was going to be, we thought, the difference leading into the game. How could Melbourne stop Kennedy and Darling? Now, to get him back and fit at the right time of the year, looks as though the week off did him the world of good, and they just had no answers for him. The thing about Josh Kennedy that separates him from the other power forwards in the competition is his ability to score goals, not from marks. Like, he can score goals on the ground. He's elite defensively and he's elite on the ground. And leading into next week's grand final, do Collingwood have a match-up for him, considering Goldsack's probably been beaten the last 2 weeks, and he got 5 kicked on him against Rewalt. So that'll be an issue for Nathan Buckley and Collingwood as they preview this game this week.
They've got some legitimate finals experience, the Eagles, but if you look back to the 2016 grand final against the Hawks, Kennedy, Darling and Lacroix were all pretty quiet.
Yeah, it's the one blemish on their career, I think. And not often in footy do we get a second chance at things, and they would have been really disappointed with their performances way back in 2015.
Yeah, 2015.
But you judge them on big games, and those 3 players that you mentioned, just 2 goals in that game. And the Eagles, their performance on that day, once again, the game was over at quarter time with Hawthorn kicking 5 straight. So they go back there with more experience, more games under their belt. They'll be better prepared. Can they stand up? Because last time they were there, they failed. So that's the challenge for the Eagles and those star players that you mentioned.
All right, let's take a look at their opponents. They are taking on the Magpies, and what a night it was on Friday night at the MCG. 2 pivotal players, Brodie Grundy and Steele Sidebottom.
Just an absolutely stunning performance. It shocked the football world, I think. It was these 2 players that set the game up with Mason Cox, who we'll look at shortly. But Brodie Grundy is only 24 years of age, and his performance this year, he's now a top 10 player in the game. Perhaps he might win a surprise Brownlow medal and lead his team into the grand final this week, but still Sidebottom, 41 disposals. Uncharacteristically, 35 of those were uncontested. So he really held his width, Sidebottom, I thought, and really stretched Richmond's team defence. And then Grundy, they kicked 10 goals from stoppages, Collingwood, which is unheard of. And he absolutely tore apart a premiership ruckman in Nan Curvis, and I loved it when Grigg went in the ruck as well and showed him no respect and punched the ball 20 metres out. So Brodie Grundy played the perfect game. Sidebottom was a star, as was the next man we're going to look at.
Yeah, Mason Cox, the American Pie, who is obviously making global headlines for his contribution and the job that he did on Alex Rance.
Oh, it was. And you know, he's been quiet the last 2 weeks in the finals, but this is what he's learnt from that. So clearly he does his film study, Mason Cox. I thought in the first 2 finals he just stood there and jumped without a run-up. Have a look at his work off the ball that we've highlighted. Now, this is on an All-Australian, a multiple All-Australian player in Alex Rance, the best defender in the game. Look at the work off the ball that leads to these 8 contested marks that he took. Once again, you'll see it. The timing for the push, he gets separation on Rance. The kicker knows exactly where to put it into the space. Then he launches at it. And good luck trying to stop that with his height. You'll see it again. Doesn't get it the first time, but his movement is what gets defenders offside. Doesn't get that first one, even though he had split. So he comes back, his work rate outstanding, pushes off again, leads into the perfect spot, and the kick, I thought they just handled that beautifully. Time and time he did it again. You'll see it. His aggression off the ball is why he had such a big game. That one he points, that's where I want the footy. Put it into the space, I'll push, I'll run, and I'll jump. So I just love the fact that he had learnt from his first 2 finals outings where it didn't go to plan. He's done his study and he's come out and he's almost single-handedly put his side into a grand final.
How much responsibility does Alex Rance have to take for that performance?
No, he was poor. Yeah, I thought he gave up far too easily. And I think, well, they started De Goey on him, and De Goey, I thought, did the right thing, pulled him right back to the goal square. So, I mean, it's a bad night, isn't it? We're all allowed a bad night, but there is now a body of work for teams to target Rance, and he has some weaknesses, and teams like Collingwood and Nathan Buckley, I thought, coached beautifully, are starting to exploit that.
The performance of the Tigers' forward line was questionable, and they seemingly don't have the targets, do they? And perhaps that could be a reason why they do want to get Tom Lynch into the football club.
Well, there's no doubt. And look, it'd be wrong of us to overreact on the back of one poor game, because they've had the best system, they've been the best side in the competition for 18 months. But this is the numbers just from the prelim final. They went to Jack Riewoldt 18 times. Caddy was ineffective, we know that, just 3 times targeted. Martin just twice, Castagna and Edwards. Now, they only had 3 goal kickers. Riewoldt kicked 5. So Tom Lynch is definitely a welcome addition into that side. There'll be an adjustment period, but they'll get better with him inside next year.
Now, there were people laughing at us about our reporting on Dustin Martin here on afl.com.au going back to...
Well, Richmond weren't happy.
Last Friday. Richmond were telling us that he was fine. These are the pictures that our cameras caught at a closed training session. This was Friday, so 8 days out from the game, going inside. Then at training earlier in the week, he really didn't look right. And then last night, his performance at the MCG, well, it was far from good. Should they have played him?
I would have played him, yes, because he's put his hand up to play, and you know, is a 3/4 fit or half fit Dustin Martin better than the next player?
Only 6 kicks.
They would have played, and that was the issue for him. He was really reluctant to kick the footy, just 6 kicks, and the explosive power away from the contest wasn't there. Also, by design or by the way he was feeling, spent a lot of time forward. From the 2-minute mark in the game, he went forward, and maybe that was to expose Greenwood in the matchup. I understand that, but you put your hand up to play, you're fit, and he was, you know, I would have played him, as I said. Asprey's the one that maybe they shouldn't have played, because he was all at sea as well with that illness that he had. OK, now the watching brief this week is going to be Jeremy Howe. There is no doubt about that. His injury that happened here for MLC in the 3rd term had him hobbling into the football club this morning. How important is Jeremy Howe to the Pies grand final chances? Well, when you look at the West Coast tall forward line, he's vital. He's almost, you know, with Grundy and Sidebottom and Cox as their most important. So he'll get a big job. And once again, his performance, particularly in the first half, was just outstanding. Some of his spoils and intercept work was great. It was nasty, went off, got it treated, came back on. He would have had some painkillers, no doubt. He'll be extremely sore. But with ankles, you can get yourself up. They'll use some painkilling injections, and you'd expect him to have no worries about playing this weekend.
Around Saturday lunchtime, he strolled into the club, hobbled into the club, in fact. Let's hear what he had to say.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty sore today, there's no doubt, but a longer week obviously helps this week. Nah, look, I'm just going to get assessed now. Clearly nice icing last night. Probably look a bit tired, but I'll be fine.
So that is the word from Jeremy Howe. So we are almost there. The trade period is just around the corner. Obviously, Tom Lynch is going to be one of the big conversations there when trade radio starts up. We've also got, of course, on afl.com.au, exclusive coverage of the final day of the trade period on Wednesday, October 17. Our live video stream begins from 5 p.m. with the deadline in prime time. The only place to watch it all happen is right here on afl.com.au. We've got the camera in the room where the contracts are signed and the paperwork is all ticked off, and Kane, you'll be a part of it as well.
It's fascinating as well, because right now there's 16 clubs and there's 16 supporter bases thinking, well, how are we going to get better? Well, this is the chance to get better, and it's captivating the football fans, as I said, because they want answers into what their club is doing to have a better performance in 2019, and we'll be all over it.
Yeah, so while the season is about to end, don't worry, afl.com.au remains the destination for the very latest. Now, it's all about the grand final. 2:30 on Saturday at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. There's been a bit of conjecture about that. Eagles fans not happy that they don't get to host it over there. We just got to get over that. It's not going to change.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy it's at the MCG, to be honest. And West Coast will come over with some confidence because they performed really well late in the season at the MCG against Collingwood when they lost Nat Nui. They also beat them in the qualifying final, of course. Now, that one was at home. So it really is a genuine 50-50 split. I think Collingwood rightly deserve to start favourite because they beat the best team in the competition at the MCG. But it's set up beautifully.
One more thing for one final time on the round so far in 2018. What about this from Mason Cox on Twitter? Just a reminder, Melbourne fans, my parents' flight from Dallas to Melbourne return was cheaper than Melbourne to Perth this weekend.
I love his little bit of arrogance, little bit of swagger, the little bit of Americanism that he brings. Even when he was clanking those marks on Friday night, the little nod to himself, bit of verbal to his opponent. It's great for the game.
Of course, afl.com.au will have grand final week covered. We will have full post-game coverage on Saturday night as well after the match. Huge thanks to all our editors, our producers, our studio crew. It's been so much fun bringing you the round so far in 2018. Thanks, Kane.
Thank you. See you on grand final day.
See ya.